All right, so these are going to be my Week 5 UFL power rankings. Let's get started here. At number 8, we're going to have the Arlington Renegades. They're 0-4. You know, obviously the worst record in the league. They're still winless, which is pretty depressing considering they, did win the XFL championship last year. Now they're starting the season 0-4. It's not a good look, but they also went 4-6 last year and won the title. So that's still not out of the question for them to turn their season around here. But this week was not a good week for them. They lost 17-9 versus the 0-3 Houston Roughnecks. So two winless teams going at it, and they got outmatched poorly on offense. Their offense put up 9 points, was atrocious. Louis Perez only had 144 yards, one touchdown, one interception, and one fumble, so not great there. Deontay Burnett was a bright spot of the team, had 58 receiving yards and a touchdown, which is good, but overall, um, they were very, very bad in this game. Louis Perez did not look like a good quarterback in this game. He looked pretty bad for the most part. Their offensive line did not really help him out a lot. They also had a few drop passes, but he just made quite a bit of bad passes as well. And they only put up 193 yards of total offense, but even then, still, they're only within one possession and had a chance to tie it or take the lead there towards the end of the game, only down by 8 with the ball on the last drive of the game, but they ended up getting strip sacked. Louis Perez got strip sacked, and the Roughnecks recovered, and then ended the game out there. So not the worst game for them on defense. Only let up 17 points, and they still had a chance to win or tie the game on the last possession. So not the worst performance you could have thought of, but it was still not a good performance by any means. Um, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and you're going to have to figure out something on the offensive side, especially with your running game, if you're going to want, to have a chance at making the playoffs this season. You got to have a really good record from here on out if you want a chance at making the postseason. Number 7 is going to be the Memphis Showboats, who are 1-3. They started the season 1-0 and now have since lost 3 straight games, which is not a good sign. They lost 32-17 this week versus the Battlehawks. Battlehawks are pretty good, but they let up 32 points, which is obviously not very good. They put up 17, which is okay. Also, Case Cookus, their starting quarterback, did end up getting injured in this game. When he was playing, he had 55 yards with one touchdown and one pick, so not great numbers when he was playing, but he didn't play that long. Troy Williams came in, threw for 37 yards, so they did not really put up a lot of yards on the offensive side. Darius Victor was good with 74 total yards and a touchdown. But yeah, they got outgained by almost 3 times their amount of yards. They only had 127 total yards of offense and let up 355 yards. So they got outgained by 228 yards in this game. That is not a good sign for either side of this team, offense and defense. It's very, very poor showing. They still put up 17 points despite only having 127 total yards, so that's a good sign. But overall, this was a poor, poor performance for the Memphis Showboats, who felt like they were getting outmatched in every facet of the game throughout the entirety. Case Cookus did get hurt, so I hope he is able to come back and play in Week 5, but it's not looking likely right now. So Troy Williams is probably going to be the starting quarterback for Week 5 and potentially, going forward throughout the rest of the season. We don't know the severity of Case Cookus' injury quite yet, but it was not looking good originally, but hopefully he can come back later this season. They also did re-sign DJ Daniel, who was a defensive back for them in the USFL last year, and he was an all-USFL player. So maybe that can be, a good spark to their defense going forward. But overall, their offense also has to do something better. And with Troy Williams instead of Case Cookus, they're going to have a big challenge ahead of them for the rest of the season. Number 6 is the Houston Roughnecks, who are 1-3. Started 0-3 and won their first game this week, 17-9 versus the Arlington Renegades. Reed Sinnott was pretty good, 119 yards with 9 rushing yards and 1 touchdown, so 200 total yards with the touchdowns, pretty good there. Mark Thompson, running back, came back this week. He was all USFL player last season, so it's good to have him back. He had 39 yards and one touchdown, so his impact was felt significantly in this game. Also, receiver Cyril Grayson had 3 receptions for 62 yards, so he was pretty good. 17 points for offense is not a whole lot, but your defense looked really, really good. Only only allowing 9 total yards, and on the last possession of that game, getting that game-winning strip sack um, on Louis Perez. That was done by Chris Odom, who's been one of the better defensive linemen here in the league for Houston. So that's a good sign to see. Their defense has actually been decent throughout the whole season. Their offense has been subpar, but Reed Sinnett at quarterback's actually been really pretty good. So this is definitely a good sign for this week, and hopefully they can get some more wins here going forward. Number 5 is going to be the DC Defenders, who are 2-2. They lost this week 20-18 versus the Birmingham Stallions. Stallions are a pretty good team, so you're not too upset about this game. Um, but overall, you didn't play bad. Jordan Tiamu had 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kelvin Harmon had 93 receiving yards and a touchdown. So your offense was all right. Our defense was pretty good, only allowing 20 points. It was also a pretty rainy night or day, I guess. They had a rain delay for a while, um, and that definitely could have caused some issues on the offensive side of the ball, and defense for that matter. But overall, not a bad game. You lost by 2 points on a game-winning field goal by the Birmingham Stallions, so it's a little bit upsetting. You hit a go-ahead field goal with only a minute left in the game, and then you still ended up letting Birmingham drive down the field, get into field goal range, and kick the game-winning field goal. So not the best look on your defense there to let that one up, but overall, it's not a bad outing, only losing by 2 points to the undefeated Birmingham Stallions. Number 4 is going to be the Michigan Panthers, who are 2-2. Um, they lost this week 19-9 versus the San Antonio Brahmas. EJ Perry was not particularly great in this game. Only 77 passing yards, 49 rushing yards, and 1 lost fumble. He also didn't play that long in the game. He did end up getting injured, so it's not horrible stats for only playing part of the game. Danny Etling came in later, and he was pretty good. Um, was 11 for 14 for 105 yards and a touchdown, but he also had 1 interception and 1 lost fumble, which are not a great look there for Danny Etling. But overall, he was pretty decent, I would say. Um, Marcus Sims was pretty good in this game, having 63 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. But overall, their offense did not have that many yards. They were stacked quite a few times. Only 140 total yards of offense in this game. Certainly a cause for concern going forward, as well as EJ Perry being injured for potentially, a couple of weeks. Danny Etling did not look that bad in this game, but I still think he's a pretty significant step down from EJ Perry, so that should hinder the Panthers here a little bit going forward. Number 3 is going to be the San Antonio Brahmas, who won 19-9 versus the Michigan Panthers. They were coming in this week with a new quarterback after Chase Garbers got injured, and he was looking like one of the best quarterbacks in this league. Quentin Dormady took over the starting job for this game, and he was a pretty good quarterback in the XFL last year. And he picked up about right where he left off. He was pretty good in this game, having 269 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception in his opening game, which is pretty good. Jontre Kirkland had over 100 yards in this game, same with Justin Smith. So 2 different receivers getting over 100 total yards there is pretty good. 264 total yards of offense to only 140 that they let up on defense, which is really good. They got sacked a couple of times as well. Not a lot of rushing yards for the Brahmas this week. But overall, pretty good performance from their defense, specifically only letting up 9 points at 140 yards is a really, really good outing. And it is really good sign to see that Quentin Dormady played as well as he did. So they shouldn't be taking too much of a hit following the Chase Garbers injury. Number 2 is actually going to be the Birmingham Stallions, who find themselves here at number 2 rather than number 1, because I personally don't think they had the most impressive victory this week. They won 20-18 versus the DC Defenders, which is a good win there, and they won on a game-winning field goal, which is good. But overall, their offense was not great in this game. They still had 356 yards of total offense, but they also had, I believe, two red zone turnovers in this game, which is not a good look. Matt Corral was actually the starting quarterback in this game, which is an interesting thing to see because they've been running a dual quarterback system here with Adrian Martinez. Martinez got the start last game and played the entire game, and he was amazing in that game. So I figured Martinez would just continue to get the starting role here, but they actually went back to Matt Corral, who ended up playing basically the entire game this week. He wasn't bad, but certainly not to the level that Adrian Martinez was last week. But he did look like a much improved passer compared to what he's done so far in this season, so that's a good sign there. He had 240 yards and a touchdown, as well as 51 rushing yards, but he also lost a fumble in the red zone. Not a great look there. CJ Marable lost a fumble in the red zone. Not a great look there. But Ricky Person had 79 yards. Amari Rogers had 82 yards and a touchdown. And their kicker was 4 for 4 on field goals, including the game winning field goal with only about 9 seconds left in the game. So that's a good sign, that they were able to still pull out this victory. But overall, uh, I feel like Martinez would be a better option just to stick out for the rest of the season rather than trying to still get Matt Corral some playing time in here. I think Martinez has made less mistakes than Matt Corral, but overall, still pretty good team right now. Obviously, still undefeated, which is very very good to see. And they're going to stay here at number two, which could be a little bit controversial. But my number one team here is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks. They're 3-1, started 0-1 since won three straight games, and their only loss, was on a 64-yard game-winning field goal as time expired. So realistically, they've been, one of the best teams in this league for sure. They won 32-17 versus the Showboats and had an absolute dominating victory on both sides of the ball, having 355 yards of total offense compared to 127 yards that they let up. It was a very, very good performance there. AJ McCarron was 35 of 45 for 222 yards, three touchdowns to one interception. Really good numbers there. Jacob Sailors had 122 total yards and a touchdown. Jacour Pearson made his first start of the season here. He has not played the first 3 weeks. He was injured in training camp, but he came back and had 10 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. He did have a fumble loss as well, but he still played really, really good for his first game back, and he was one of the best receivers in the XFL last season. So getting him back this week was really, really good for this offense, and his presence was felt in game one, making a really good impact. They also had all three running backs, Mateo Durant, Wayne Gallman, and Jacob Sailors, all three active in the same game for the first time this week. So they're getting healthier and just got a very dynamic player in Jacour Pearson back and absolutely dominated this week. So that's why they're going to actually be my number one team over the Birmingham Stallions. But I would not be upset if you were to still put the Stallions at number one. Looking at the XFL conference standings right now, you have the Battlehawks at the 1 seed at 3-1, and the Brahmas at 2 at 3-1 as well. Defenders at 3 at 2-2, and the Renegades at 4 at 0-4. So the Renegades are likely going to have to be at least 500 if they want a chance at making the postseason. Take the top two teams from each division here, and overall, it's looking like they're probably going to have to almost win out the rest of the season if they want a chance at making that postseason, which is going to be definitely a tough task to ask of them. In the USFL conference, the Stallions are 4-0. They got the Panthers at 2-2, the Showboats at 1-3, and the Roughnecks at 1-3. So the Stallions are basically already locked up into that spot. Then either of those three teams still, Panthers, Showboats, and Roughnecks, could really be fighting down towards the last couple games of the season. So that should be a fun playoff race there. Sort of a fun race here in the XFL conference too between those top three teams. But the Renegades are probably going to be out of the playoff contention, while the USFL conference, everybody is still very much alive. Looking at my quarterback power rankings, I got AJ McCarron at 1. Chase Garber's still at 2, even though he hasn't played this week and won't be playing the rest of the season. Reed Sinnett at 3, actually. He's been playing really, really good. Jordan Tiamo at 4. Louis Perez at 5. He had a bad week this week, falls down a couple spots. Adrian Martinez at 6. Quentin Dormady at 7 in his first game playing. Good to see there. Case Cookus at 8. EJ Perry at 9 and Matt Corral at 10. So still don't think any of these quarterbacks have been bad at all this season. Um, and Matt Corral certainly played better this week, I think, than he has any other week, but he still only find himself here at number 10. Looking at the attendance this week, the Battlehawks game against the Showboats in St. Louis had 31,000 fans. They're going to have 30,000 probably every single game in St. Louis. Defenders and Stallions, they're at Birmingham, only had about 7,000 fans, which is pretty low compared to their season opener of 12,000. Panthers and Brahmas at Alamo Dome had about 11,000. Good to see that they're going to get consistently over the 10,000 mark. Renegades and Roughnecks at Rice Stadium there in Houston had only about 7,000 fans as well. So you really want to see close to 10,000 fans at each game. You're getting that. You're getting 30,000 plus at every Battlehawks game. You're probably going to get 10,000 plus at every Brahmas game, which is good. But these other ones are going to be a little bit more concerning there with Birmingham and Houston only at 7,000. But ultimately, you had an average of about oh shoot, hold on. Let me do some edit. All right. Okay, sorry about that, but I had to go change the average here. We had about 14,000 on average this week compared to about 10,000 on average last week, and that's going to be mostly brought up just by St. Louis. But still, a pretty good average, getting over 10,000 each week is a good threshold to be at. Look at the TV viewership this week. The Showboats and Battlehawks had about 950,000. It's good to see. Defenders and Stallions and the Panthers and Brahmas were both on simultaneously, so they had a regional broadcasting on, like you see on most NFL days, with multiple games running at the same time. So you don't get individual stats there, but overall they had 950,000 tuned in to either one of those games. The Defenders and Stallions game was on a rain delay for a long period of time, so these numbers could be a little bit um, altered a little bit because the Panthers and Brahmas was going to be turned on regionally, where Defenders and Stallions games were being shown, and then the conclusion of that game was shown on FS1, which likely got little viewership there. And then you see the Renegades and Roughnecks only got about 250,000 there on FS1. FS1 does not get a whole lot of viewerships. They were the primary, or one of the primary, um, what is it called, channels, I guess, to broadcast the USFL last season. They did not get much more than 300,000 viewers ever. So that's going to be a average that you're going to be seeing there on FS1 is about 250K. But this is going to be the only game that we're going to see this season on FS1. So that's definitely a good sign to see. They're going to try some more regional broadcasting here, like with the Stallions and Brahmas games later, to try to see if that's going to be a thing that can work. But overall, we had about 775,000 viewers on average compared to last week's average of 842,000. So if you just look at the 3 Saturday games and don't include the FS1 game here, averaging 950K is a really, really good showing, I would say, when you're going up directly against the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs. You're getting almost a million viewers. Um, is a really good sign for this league going forward. And then that's going to be it for the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check back next week for an updated power rankings list. And make sure to check out my NBA and NFL videos as well.